Hilton Hotels is a world-renowned, award-winning hotel chain known for their first-class amenities, authentic hospitality, and top-of-the-line commitment to your comfortable stay. The name Hilton has become synonymous with hotel. But did you know about Hilton's commitment to our military and its veterans? Did you? I didn't. To be honest, before this relationship unfolded, I did not know. Through Operation Opportunity, whose motto is "Our mission is your success," Hilton Hotels has been able to hire 30,000 veterans, military spouses, and dependents since 2013 with a commitment to hire 25,000. That's right, 25,000 more by the end of 2025. Wow, wow, wow. What a commitment. To learn more about Hilton's military programs, check out Operation Opportunity at jobs.hilton.com/military. Guys, I'll be the first to tell you, staying in the hatchback, sleeping on the road, Scion TC, starving artist, that might have looked cool, cramped my style massively. I definitely appreciate having an award-winning breakfast, high-speed internet, and a comfortable bed. It makes my job so much easier with the already stressful work that these projects are. Blessed that I get to do them, but it is hard work. So I'm thankful for Hilton. I appreciate them a lot. Go check out Operation Opportunity, jobs.hilton.com/military. Check it out. Hello, everyone. Tim K here, host of the Veterans Project podcast, founder of the Veterans Project, and founder of the Caregiver Project as well, to talk to you about a very close friend and Red Friday partner of ours, the Mississippi Coffee Lady. Joy Rogers is a Starkville native, Marine Corps officer's wife, and is the founder of the Mississippi Coffee Lady. She is a talented roaster who also loves our troops and caregivers and understands the importance of sharing our legacies. Now, Joy knows without capturing those legacies, we lose the importance of our men and women who so bravely served overseas and on the home front. So, if you buy a bag of her artisan roasts on Red Friday, she gives every single penny to the projects. That's right. Every bit of that sale goes to the projects and ensures our lives and legacies are never forgotten. Now, I brought up the importance time and time again of #1person. It takes one person realizing the importance of both the Veterans Project and the Caregiver Project to create a positive impact in our storytelling community. When you get behind our cause and purchase a bag of coffee on Friday, you benefit the project. It's simple as that. And she's doing a giveaway every Friday as well. Simply share your favorite project from the Veterans Project and the Caregiver Project via Instagram or our Facebook, and you have a chance to win a bag of her beautifully handcrafted roasts. So what do you say? Just head over to the MississippiCoffeeLady.com on Red Friday, buy a bag, and support the project. Easy as that. Our next guest is the president of the Chris Krossing Foundation, which was named in loving memory after United States Army Staff Sergeant Chris Kiernan, who lost his life serving his country in Iraq. His loving wife, Donna Kiernan Carter, created the Chris Krossing Foundation in aims of helping those who have also lost a loved one in the line of duty. Now, how does she do this? Through equine activities, and that's what the Chris Krossing Foundation is all about. The foundation is a nonprofit 501c3 organization that relies solely on the generosity of its supporters to host horseback riding workshops for wounded warriors and families that have lost loved ones that were serving in the United States military and family members of fallen first responders. They have horses of varying personalities to accommodate various experience levels of the riders and to ensure they can provide a good match for each rider. So important. On the podcast, we discussed everything from Donna's childhood in Lake Charles to the moment she met Chris to his tragic loss of life and her search for resilience in the midst of a storm. Donna's path has led her to a place of healing help for others, and I know that you are going to be absolutely blown away by her story. But I've already said plenty. Here she is, the one and only Donna Kiernan Carter.
The Veterans Project is a comprehensive essay capturing the legacies of our warfighters, caregivers, and civilians who have stepped forward in defense of our patriotic principles in an effort to capture their stories and to never forget the staggering sacrifices of our nation's finest. This is the Veterans Project podcast, where our legacies are the mission. Here's your host, Tim K.
Finally.
Let's get this party started.
Yeah. That took way too long from my side. We'll get it right eventually. Donna, well, welcome to the Veterans Project podcast. Alongside me, I've got Donna Kiernan, Gold Star wife to the husband, Chris, an incredible man, warrior, who I'm sure she misses greatly. But through the preservation of her work in what she's doing in equine therapy, she's created an incredible format to honor his legacy. And Donna, I just wanted to say thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Donna, can you take me back? With this podcast, we go back in life and talk a little bit about where you came from and kind of what led your path to where you are now. Do you mind telling me a little bit about growing up and what that was like for you in Lake Charles, right?
Yes, it was great growing up in the South. Everyone is so friendly and everyone is considered family. And it was great growing up on the Gulf of Mexico, always surrounded by water. And that was just the life. Seafood, fishing, the beach. It was great.
What do you remember about your parents, and what do you remember about life as a youngster in Lake Charles?
Well, my parents were involved in everything with us. My brothers with Boy Scouts, me with Girl Scouts, football, baseball. Our parents were very supportive of us.
And when did you move to Texas? When was that?
Well, I moved to Texas in 1995. Okay. And worked at Fort Hood as a Department of Defense contractor and was there at Fort Hood until 2008.
So how did you meet Chris?
I met Chris at a Collective Soul concert at Fort Hood.
Oh, Collective Soul. All right. That's a cool way to meet somebody.
It was fun. We went right up into the front and we had a blast.
Yeah.
And then from that time on, we were never apart.
What was it about Chris that really attracted you to him? What pulled you in? What was his draw?
Well, first it was his eyes. He has the longest eyelashes I've ever seen. But he was just fun.
Yeah.
And smiling and jolly and wanted to have a good time. And he that's what pulled me in, was his aura of being happy.
Yeah. What do you remember about the early years of your... What do you remember about your wedding day? What was that like?
Oh, that was... I was not nervous at all. Neither one of us were. Everybody else was nervous. We had a huge military wedding in Lake Charles, and everything went perfect. It was a perfect day.
You guys got married in Lake Charles, correct?
We did.
You moved, and then you stayed on Fort Hood.
Yes, we lived at Fort Hood.
Okay. And when did he get deployed?
He was on his second deployment to Iraq.
Okay. So he'd already been deployed.
He'd already been there. Yes.
Did you notice? Did he talk about that first deployment at all?
He did, but the thing about Chris was a warrior, and he left the war at the war. Yeah. He didn't bring it home with him. He wasn't afraid of packages on the side of the road or, little certain things that set people off. He wasn't afraid of that. And he separated it. And that was what was good about it, is I looked for all the signs when he came home the first time, but they just weren't there.
Yeah. So you were with him on his first deployment then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And then he deployed again October the 14th, 2007, and May the 6th, he deployed October 14th, 2006. Okay. And on 5/6/7, May the 6th, 2007, he was killed in action.
So, but he went over in October. So what do you remember about the months leading up to that? Did you guys write back and forth, or did you have Skype, or what was that like?
Well, before he deployed in October, we did a lot. We went to the beach. We got a group together. A bunch of us went to the beach. We were making memories before the whole group deployed. The soldiers that he served with were always at our house. They called me Mama.
You were their mama. Yeah.
Yeah. Chris he attracted the younger ones. I mean, they gravitated to Chris because he was a big guy and they felt safe around him. Mm-hmm. And they gravitated to us, and they were always at our house. But it was great. And several of them had lived with us from time to time, but I just remember Thanksgiving and things like that prior to that deployment, but they were always at our house. No matter whatever holiday it was, we took them all in, and they had Christmas with us or Thanksgiving with us. And he was very well liked, and he was looked up to by many.
What was one of your most pleasant memories with Chris before he deployed?
Before he deployed, we were on the beach one morning, and we had our dogs out there, and they were running up and down the beach, and there was nobody else on the beach. It was just us, and it was like really early. And I just looked at him. I said, you know what? This is one of those moments that's really a good moment. He goes, you know what? It sure is. And, the sun was coming up, and it was just quiet, and it was just us and our dogs out there. And I just remember that as being a really good moment. Yeah. And then when we were with the big group, that we had went with, we were all out on the patio, everybody talking and laughing and cutting up. And those guys knew they were getting ready to leave in 2 weeks. Yeah. They knew it was time to go, but we just made the best of it. They're going to war. Yeah. That's their thing.
Yeah. And Chris was armor, right?
He was armor.
Did he love being armor?
He loved it.
What did he love about it most?
He liked to blow things up in his tank. He wanted to blow things up in his tank.
Things up.
He loved that tank.
Like most men. He had this inner desire to blow things up.
Yes.
Yeah. So he, when he went over there, what do you remember leading up to that day? What do you remember about some of the best thing, as far as some of the best things about your marriage? What did you enjoy most about being married to him? I know that's probably a pretty broad question, but
the cool thing was our families got along. His family was from Virginia Beach, and my family's from Lake Charles. And every time they all met up, everybody had a great time, and we had a good marriage because we had, both our families we still had our mom and dads were together, and we're both Catholic families, and we had so much support from our families. Yeah. Especially during deployments. It was tough, and they supported him and the soldiers that he served with.
One team, one fight.
That's it.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, the people that donated money to us to send them things at Christmas, every soldier in the company, not platoons, but in the company, Delta Company, had something for Christmas. Wow. And I remember the bill just to mail those packages was $1,400 just to mail those packages.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And he called me, and every one of them got a remote control race car, and you could hear, and he goes, listen to this. And he called me from Iraq, and you could hear the race cars going up and down the hallways.
That's awesome.
Because every boy had a toy.
How important do you think that is, that network and that community? Being able to have that back at home. How important is that as a spouse of a soldier?
It's very important. And sometimes some of it just in the military community, sometimes it can be nonsense, but for the most part, it's very valuable because we have each other. It's just the things that people can bring to a phone call with their soldier don't really need to be talked about. And, we have to be supportive, and we have to be self-sustained back home and take care of ourselves and take care of our kids and everything that's going on. And we can't worry them with little things.
Right.
And so sometimes that would just ride on me a little bit because they wanted to talk about every little thing going wrong. And I'm like, no, please don't bring all this stuff up to them. Imagine where they're at. Imagine what they're doing. They don't need to be worrying about small things. We got this.
I saw that when I was overseas, when I was in Iraq. I remember guys like being stressed out about their wife at home, or, of course, it was a problem if there was, another guy around or something.
Yes.
There were those problems. There are those kind of woman problems, and those are a whole other thing. But just the little things like the bills and and issues with that. And I could see the guys in very supportive units back at home. And obviously I was in an infantry unit, so only dealt with guys. But having that supportive home unit, it totally changed a guy's morale.
It absolutely does. And that is it. You said it, morale. Mm-hmm. And whenever they hear about all the loose ends everywhere, their morale is very low. And it can't be, because they have to have each other's back.
Yeah, right. And morale is everything in war. When you lose that, you lose a war.
It is.
So what do you remember? Who do you remember as being some of the most supportive people while he was deployed?
I would say that the most supportive people were my family and his family. And then also, the family readiness groups, they were supportive. What you have to keep in mind too is what we just talked about. It's morale over there. And so sometimes the older, because I am older than some of the younger ones, we had to talk to them and ask them to please keep some of these things, on this side of the phone line.
Right.
Because things get bad and they have to have their mind in that fight and not about a water faucet breaking.
That's probably harder, in those, early years of marriage where your maturity is not quite there and you haven't developed that. And so you, as the older wives, not the more mature wives, yes, the more mature wives, you're able to kind of mentor those younger wives,
exactly.
The wives who haven't been at it as long.
Exactly. And the thing about it is it works the other way too. Whenever you're a widow, whenever your soldier doesn't come home, the more mature wives end up mentoring the younger ones.
Yeah.
So it goes on both sides.
Yeah. Wow. So what do you remember leading up to that day? Do you remember anything specifically, anything, kind of unique about those days leading up to when you found out, when you got that information?
It's kind of vague, but the odd thing was the night before I was advised. I was at the home of a full bar colonel. His wife and I were friends. And actually, all of the wives there were commanders' wives. And my husband's a staff sergeant. Yeah. So I asked them, I said, what is it like for you to go to the gold ring families? Who are these gold ring families? And they said, no, it's gold star families. Little did I know the next day I'd be a gold star family.
Wow.
So the night before, we were at her house and we were just socializing and talking about the funerals they went to and their husbands' commands. And then the next morning I got a knock on the door.
Yeah. What do you remember about that moment? What's that feeling? I think it's important for people to know, to hear that, what that was like for you.
Well, it was a really hard knock on the door. It was around 10 a.m. So I thought it was the kids down the street coming over to ask if they could walk my dog.
Yeah.
Even my dog didn't bark, which was odd. So I looked out the window and I saw him standing there.
Yeah.
And I froze.
Yeah.
And then I opened the door.
Take your time.
And I told them they couldn't come in.
Yeah.
I told them it was a mistake. I said, there's so many soldiers that have lived here at this house. They used our address. You have the wrong house. You have to go.
Yeah.
But they came in. And they just kept coming at me. Yeah. And my back was up against the wall. And I screamed at them, no. Yeah. And then they started to tell me how, on behalf of a grateful nation, that they regretted to inform me. And I just kept screaming, no, you have the wrong place. You have the wrong name. And they said his name.
Yeah. I don't know how, you do that job, and I don't know.
I don't know how they do that job either. But I know they were crying just as hard as I was.
The support you had to feel in that moment probably meant a lot, knowing that they could, that it hurt them too.
Yeah, I could see the look on their face. They did not want to be there.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it started. Making decisions.
Yeah.
Calling people.
How did you move on from that, from that moment? I mean, there's obviously no getting over that. You can't.
No.
Losing a warrior, losing your husband, the man you love the most. How do you move past that?
One day at a time.
Yeah. What did you decide? What were the conscious decisions you made after that to continue on? Because that is hard. I mean, I can't imagine,
Yeah, you have to do something with all their clothes and shoes and, You have to decide where to bury them and what to put on the headstone, and you have to make a whole lot of decisions, and I didn't want to. Yeah. But I did. And I had a lot of support from family and friends.
How important was that network after, Chris?
It was everything.
Yeah.
Yes, it's how I could keep going. And for probably a good 6 years after he was killed, I was just in darkness.
Yeah.
I didn't want to socialize. I didn't want to go anywhere, talk to anybody. I just slept a lot.
Yeah. Who was the most supportive during that time? Who really did people come out and come here to, or go to Fort Hood to be around you, or did you go back to Lake Charles for a bit, or?
I did both, but mostly just stayed home. But people would come to see me, but I just really wanted to be alone.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to socialize very much.
Yeah.
I did go back to Virginia to see his parents.
Yeah.
A couple of times.
How were they handling it? What was...
Very hard.
Very hard, yeah.
Very hard.
Yeah.
Still very supportive of me. To this day, 12 years later, I still talk to them. And his sister, brother, his mom.
Yeah.
We stay in touch.
I mean, you can never cut that family tie, you know? That's
Never.
something that'll never end.
Never want to.
Yeah. It's powerful. So, you had the 6 difficult, years, and obviously it's still difficult, but those 6 years were really tough. What kind of pulled you out of that hole? How did you get out of that, and how did you move on from that?
I think leading up to it was being involved with survivor groups. So there's survivor outreach services, there's TAPS. These are all groups that are made up just of survivors. So it doesn't matter if it was killed in action, died after action, or suicide. We all have the same loss. And those groups helped me a lot. Although I have drifted away from them somewhat, I do go back from time to time. Another thing that kind of helped me get back to life, I guess, and socialize a little bit more were support of my friends. And they're urging me to not stop living because Chris wouldn't want that.
Right.
And so 1 year I bought a horse. On the anniversary of his death, May the 6th, I bought a horse. I did.
Yeah. What led up to that decision? Why did you decide?
Well, I moved away. I moved away from Fort Hood, and I bought 5 acres, and had a barn built, a barn dominium, if you will, and I live in the barn, in an apartment in it, and had stalls built, and I had 2 donkeys. Well, then I decided I wanted a horse. And now I have 7 of them.
One turned into 7, as it often does with animals.
Well, it's hard to say no when you want all of them.
Right.
At one time I had 9 horses, so now I have 7. But that really helped me. The first horse that I had, 3 months later, I had a second horse. And about 3 months later after that, I had another.
Wow.
So I know I can't ride all of them, but
it happened fast.
They needed homes.
They needed homes, and your home was right.
Yeah. And I had the land, and I had the place to put them, and I was so excited to have horses. And since then, I think a lot of my time is absorbed by horses. Almost everything I do revolves around horses except my full-time job. But yes, I love horses. They've done a lot for me. And I wanted to share with the other survivors that I know. I wanted to share what horses did for me. I want to share that with them.
That's special. Yeah. That what do you think the element is about? Because I hear that kind of connecting factor, and a lot of these veterans are now starting, equine therapy programs for other veterans. I know a few of them, including Heroes for Horses and groups like that really help veterans transition out. And I think there's kind of an element with horses where you have to really work to earn their trust. They're not dogs, like a dog will like just kind of stupidly run up to you. Like you could be a killer and it would like love you, like,
hey,
yeah, hey, what's up? Happy, always happy, most of them. And they just have this element of trust that comes so quickly, but horses are different, right?
Exactly. And a horse can be so skittish, and yet you work with them enough and you can have them join up with you. And it's this process. And it's pretty neat when it happens, when you work with a horse long enough. And then if you're out in the pasture and you're lunging them and you're exercising them, and then the horse stops and it walks up to you, and you turn your back to that horse, and that horse will walk up to you and put its head on your shoulder. It's called matching up.
Okay.
And that's happened for me several times, and I really didn't even know why they did it. I'm like, what's going on here? I don't know why this horse is doing this. But the matching up process is you've built their trust and they trust you, and they're giving in, basically.
Yeah.
Giving in.
So that was this kind of the start of the healing process for you then, getting to spend time with these beautiful animals.
Yes, and then one day I was at the Survivor Outreach Services Center at Fort Sam Houston, and I started talking to the leadership there and explaining to them that I had these horses and I wanted to share with the others what these horses did for me. So I had decided to have an event where we would have the Gold Star families invited over, and we would have horseback riding for them. And that was 6 years ago.
Wow.
And every year I have...
But what led up to that decision? Why did you decide that you wanted to do that?
Just for what the horses did for me.
Yeah.
And a healing process. And it helped me have patience and to learn how to teach a 1,200-pound animal how to bow, and how to do so many different things that I've taught my horses to do, and that they learn from me, and they do what I want them to do. Well, not all the time, but most of the time.
That's part of that trust process, right? Like building that. They don't always do the thing that you want them to do.
No, but they're just so beautiful and majestic. And when I'm exercising my horses, I just look at them and go, wow, this horse trusts me.
Yeah. And that process is pretty special.
It is. The joining up is special when it finally happens. Whenever you teach a horse something and they forget, and then they have to help them relearn some processes. I'm not outside every day riding a horse.
Yeah.
But I deal with them every single day.
Yeah.
Interact with them every single day.
What do you think, when you started this, the foundation up, what was the beginning goal for that? Was it what it is now, or did that kind of transform as you went along?
Well, it started with Survivor Kids Day, and that's a once a year event, and it's huge. I mean, we probably have a good 200 people here. Another thing that happens is throughout the year, on social media and stuff like that, I'll look and see someone who might be struggling, another survivor, and I'll invite them to come over.
Okay.
So in my barn dominium is a guest house that sleeps 6.
Oh, wow.
And I'll invite them to come over and have a weekend here. And it's no cost to them because we're a nonprofit foundation and we have such awesome donors that nothing comes out of their pocket or my pocket.
Wow.
So we have, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and I'm able to do things like that. So I remember this past Easter, the Saturday before Easter, we had about 18 kids here.
Wow.
Survivor kids. And they came and rode horses, and they did Easter egg hunt and decorated horseshoes and did all kind of things. And this wasn't the big event. I mean, they also come to the big event every year. And I know these kids ask throughout the year, when's it going to be time to go back to Chris Krossing? And so this Easter, we called it Easter Horse Play Day. And that was just for the day. That wasn't a weekend or anything. But I do see some of the surviving spouses struggle quite a bit. Some of them actually want to take their own lives.
Yeah.
And they have children.
Wow.
And in some cases, there's no one to help them with these children. So the children are attached to them all the time.
Wow.
And they don't have a spouse to help them.
Jeez.
So this gives them a break.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever they get here with their kids, we take the kids by the hand and we keep them busy all day.
Yeah. Wow.
And the surviving spouse can rest or have some time off or read a book or whatever she wants to do.
Right.
So we do that. Every month there's something going on here.
Wow. Do you ever have a moment where you stop and you just stare and you think, this is so awesome? Like I'm.
You know what? I stop and I have those moments and I think, what could we do better?
Wow.
I never stop and say, this is so awesome. I just stop and think, what could we do better? What could we do to reach more people? And I have had some veterans come here that have PTSD. We've had some reunions here of warriors that served even in Bosnia together. They had a reunion here. One of them's going to get married here.
Oh, cool. Wow.
Yeah. So
that's pretty special.
Yes, it is. And they pay for nothing when they come here because we just have these donors that are so awesome and they really support their surviving kids. Mm-hmm. And the surviving Gold Star families. And so that's why we're able to do such awesome things with them and to no cost to them. So they love coming here. And I love that they love coming here.
We need that network, don't we, though?
Yes.
You know? How important is that? Just the ability for you to do what you do, right? You have the idea, it's like anything, you're starting a business, you're starting a nonprofit.
Exactly.
But especially in this community, where you want to start, that's a big venture. What you're doing is a big deal. To have the backers, they propel your ability to do that. And without that network, you couldn't have this.
I know, and I feel like all the time I'm saying, thank you for doing this. Thank you for your donation. Thank you. And I love it.
Yeah.
Love doing that. And it's helped me to heal we just recently had our annual event and children come up to me and say, thank you so much for doing this for us.
Wow.
And they've been coming here for the past 6 years.
And I think, being able to look at that child and look in their eyes and see their, them, having experienced all that loss that they've experienced, right? Because that's got to be traumatizing beyond all measure. And I've seen it very often at these, other camps I've gone to. I did one out in Wyoming in Jackson Hole, and it was all Special Forces families, but it was the kids had lost those dads, and that experience for them was traumatizing. You could see a lot of issues in the family and the struggle there without the father all of a sudden being gone, the shock and awe of that. So what's that like for you in getting to see those kids happy in the moment?
All of them are happy. You don't see any kids crying or whining about anything. They're very happy to be around the horses. They love the horses. We have extra horses brought in for the annual Kids Day event. So kids, they get off of one horse and get on another horse, and they want to take pictures with them, and they want to give them carrots, and, they want to pet the horses and brush them down. And it's just really good therapy for these kids, and because they don't have a phone in their hand and they're not playing a game, they're outside and they're dealing with these horses and they love them.
Do you lock up the phones?
No, we don't look up. They put them down, actually, and they don't even ask for them.
It's just natural, huh?
Yes, and they love being out with the other animals. We have goats and miniature horse and donkey, and they go over and pet them. And we have llamas and alpacas here, and we even have these cowboys that come in there from Hill Country Productions, and they teach the kids how to rope, and they teach them how to brand. Wow. Yes, they brand some leather. Okay. This year we did some Christmas ornaments that they branded.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so it is pretty special, and to see them all interact with each other, because you have kids here that lost their parent to combat. Some are combat related after they come home. Some are suicide. Yeah. And they all get together, and they really don't talk about it with each other. They're just more interested in which horse can I ride next.
That's so interesting, because at that camp that I went to that I was talking about in Wyoming, it was the same thing. I don't think I heard one soldier's name mentioned, like, the entire time I was there.
No, but I can tell you one thing.
Wow.
There's a whole bunch of dads that are looking down from heaven, watching over this and saying, look at all these people who care about my kids.
Yes. Yeah. And that's, I mean, what I was getting to is that's such an amazing thing. Like to be able to come together and find camaraderie in the community and yet celebrate the life through not even talking about it, but just enjoying the presence of each other. You know? And that community. I mean, you know how it is in the military, like community is everything, and having that connection, whether it's family or FRG, the different support groups now, you see this, your support group is these kids.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have a support group on both sides. It's for the active duty soldiers and the ones who have died.
Yeah.
And we have support on both sides. But when these kids come over here and they interact with the animals, you can't get their mind on anything else. And a lot of them just don't want to leave. That's fine.
Did you and Chris have any children?
We did not.
So did you have that desire before or no? Or were you kind of set on just,
Oh, no. We had two? And lost both of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't understand this cards that I've been dealt, but that's
Adding
okay.
Some extra degrees to the element of difficulty.
Yes. Go ahead. I'll throw the cards back at you.
Yeah. I can only imagine. What have you wanted to pass on the most when you're teaching these children at this camp? What do you want to teach them the most during that time? What's the most important thing for you to impart on them?
I think it's patience.
Ooh, I got to learn that one.
Kids these days want everything to happen within 30 minutes or, just seconds. And it's just not going to be that way. And they have to understand that they're dealing with a big, 1,200, 1,500 pound animal, and you can't get on it and ride real fast. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that you need to learn first. So first of all, they learn patience. And then they learn they might not just know everything they think they know. And then when you start to teach them about the horse and they see the horse doing what they're teaching them to do, they're just amazed with it. And then that's all they want to do is, I want a horse now. I want to ride horses.
What's the hardest thing in dealing with horses and kids?
Patience.
Yeah, it goes back to patience, huh?
It does, because kids these days want everything right now real fast. 30-minute program, they'll stay concentrated on a 30-minute program, but then after that, they lose patience. And
it's like, what's next?
When you see them tap a cell phone. If they don't get something right away on their cell phone, they keep tapping it. So they can't have everything really fast right away. You have to stop. You have to learn. You have to listen. And a lot of times I have to remind them, okay, you have to listen because this big old horse can kick you. And I'm going to show you how he cannot kick you. Okay, show me. And so we teach them just a little bit at a time and a little bit more. And so right when they get here, not everything is about getting on a horse right away and riding it. They have to brush them down. They have to learn their name. And then they also learn a little bit about that personality of that horse. Yeah. And they all have different personalities. So what's kind of cool is whenever they get on a different horse, they say, tell me what this horse's name is. And I say, this horse's name is Stormy, and he likes you to sing to him. I don't know any songs. I'm like, yes, let's sing a song together. So, walk them on a horse, singing a song.
Yeah.
And the parent is just in the background, just shaking their head, going, I can't believe this.
There's something special about the horse, that teaching element, and you really have to pay attention.
Oh, yes.
With those animals. Because
Absolutely.
If you don't, you won't learn anything.
And they do learn so much. And whenever they leave, they go and tell each horse goodbye. And I don't know how they do it, but they remember their names and everything, and they go tell them goodbye and that they'll see them again soon.
Mm-hmm. Are there certain breeds that deal better with children, or how do you choose, which horses you want around the kids? Well,
the horse is going to learn to be around kids. Now, I have one horse who's actually a retired horse from the 1st Cavalry Division Horse Detachment.
Oh, cool.
And he is not going to be around kids.
Okay.
So I can tell after he's been around here for a few years and working with him, and he's joined up with me and everything, but he's just not a horse for kids. He takes an advanced rider. He's very skittish, and he wants to ride with other horses.
Yeah.
So you can tell the characteristics of the horse if they're going to work well with the child or not. So I have 7 horses, and 2 of them stay locked up.
Okay.
During that time period.
Oh, interesting.
But we have other horses brought in. So we'll have anywhere from 14, 15 horses for the kids to ride. And we had, I believe it was 48 Gold Star kids here.
Jeez.
Plus, a parent, the grandparents come. Sometimes the parent, the surviving widow, she'll bring a friend to help.
Yeah.
So we had about 80, I can't remember, so like 88, 89, 90 Gold Stars here.
Wow. The community is so massive here in San Antonio, in the area. It's massive.
It's a military town.
Yeah, I mean, Military City, USA. But I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was telling me there are like 500 Gold Star families in San Antonio. I was just, it almost hurt me to hear that.
Yeah,
because you don't want to think about how many families have suffered.
Well, if you live in a place like the Fort Hood area, it took me approximately 11 months to leave that area after Chris was killed. And it's not a place that you can stay because the whole community of Killeen and the surrounding area is just military, constant, whereas in San Antonio, you have the metropolitan area, but you still have that comfort of having some military around.
Yeah.
Because you're used to it.
Yeah. The support system's still there, but you don't have to be surrounded by the uniform all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember growing up, as a kid, my dad was Air Force. He was in for 8 or 10 years. And, that's how we came to San Antonio, was through the Air Force. He met my mom in Tucson when he was at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. And they moved to San Antonio. And I remember just, even from a young age, like I just got it. Like it wasn't even my dad having been in the Air Force. It was just like the whole community understood.
Exactly.
And that respect level was like something special that I saw, when I got back from Iraq. I realized how important that was. You don't have too much ignorance, No,
and even for Chris Krossing Foundation, we have a board of directors, and the board of directors helps with everything. But the amount of people who offer to volunteer and who actually come here to volunteer have nothing to do with the military, but they want to come over here and support. So for every Gold Star family member we have here, we have a volunteer.
Wow. That's a lot.
It is. It's a lot.
It's a lot of volunteers.
It's a lot, but every kid that's here has their hand taken by a volunteer, and they take off with that kid, and that kid stays busy all day.
Wow. I was able to, I think it was in the summer, I got contacted by Colt McCoy and his wife. They were doing a football camp in Austin, and they wanted to have Gold Star kids.
Wow.
And so they contacted me and they said, well, Tim, Nate Boyer tells us you're the guy for South Texas, so find some Gold Star. And I think I found 50 families in like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And filled up the camp. I was like, oh, I got you. That won't be a challenge. Just because the area is there's so much military and so many families. But how quickly I found them kind of bothered me a little bit. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, you don't.
A lot.
And that's the thing, Donna, is like, it's hard on the soldiers, it's hard on me. Like stepping back into this world was tough because it's like when we leave and, when we lose guys or our brothers, we kind of, we just kind of just want to be away from it. It's hard to come. And then to invite yourself back in is tough because it's like, well, now I've got to stare this in the face and yes, it was already sad, and I don't want to think about it. And then you're there staring it in the face through their spouse, and that legacy. But it's so important. It
is. Can you imagine how important it is to that soldier who fell and who's no longer with us? Just the spirit of his being, the spirit of their family being taken care of.
Yeah.
I believe that's so important. And I've always said there's a whole bunch of dads looking down today saying, look at all these people who care about my kids.
Yeah. Do you have contact with any of his guys still? Do you still talk to any of Chris's?
All the time.
All the time. Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
In fact, there was just one over here staying in the guest house 2 weeks ago, and another one about a week before that.
Cool.
So, they're always here.
That probably feels pretty special, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
It's a community that never leaves you, and those guys will never forget Chris.
Never.
What were the initial moments like after, as far as your feelings, towards the war and, towards Iraq? You just gave me that eye roll. You knew we were going to get into this, though.
Well, Tim, I know you don't have all day.
We can go as long as you want. You got the call at 7. I'm good.
I've done a lot of research. I've read books. I've read a book by Bob Woodard. Sorry. I think that the war in Iraq was unnecessary. After it's over now, I mean, you look back on it, and I think that the reason for the war in Iraq was because of 9/11, and it really didn't have anything to do with the other. Yeah. I'm very angry about the war in Iraq.
Yeah. What do you do? What have you done since, to kind of, have you spoken about it? Have you talked to anyone about that, and kind of how you felt?
I actually tried to get on the calendar for George Bush, but that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk to George Bush about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I absolutely would.
What would you tell him if you could talk to him?
Wow. Deep question.
Because there's deep question.
I don't know if a whole bunch of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sure. That's tough. I mean, and I can't imagine, everybody tells me it's like, there's so many differences of opinion, even as soldiers, as far as guys that agree with it, guys that don't agree with it. And our thing is just to go fight the mission that our government gives us.
Yes, exactly.
And so, I have people from all different walks. I have spouses that couldn't stand the war. I have spouses that were fine with it. I have soldiers that were fine with it, soldiers that were against it. But I think, hearing your opinion on it as a Gold Star wife is unique and important. So how have you felt since? Do you still feel the same as in those initial moments?
I do.
Yeah.
I still feel the same.
Yeah. And now you've got a job that is in American oil, right?
Exactly. I work in the oil field in South Texas.
Why did you start doing that?
Because I believe in American drilled oil by Americans, and we have plenty of oil in America to sustain our energy needs, and we do not need to be dependent on foreign oil.
You put your money where your mouth is.
You bet. You bet.
Yeah. So, back to the Chris Krossing Foundation, what you're doing with that. How important is it in the advancement of the work to bring in a solid board of directors and solid surrounding people? How important is that to the foundation?
Well, I've always been a very independent, I can do this by myself kind of person. But
really? You don't strike me that way. Really? No, you definitely do.
But it just got too big.
Yeah.
Everything got too big, and people were saying, let us help you. And I didn't know if their vision was going to be my vision.
Right.
And come to find out it is.
That's always scary, though, right? Kind of releasing some of that to someone else.
Yes, I had to let go. And we have a board of directors of 7.
Wow.
And wow, are they ever awesome.
What do they do? What are all their roles?
Well, we have a treasurer, we have secretary, we have director of events, director of vendors, director of volunteers. So they help organize all the different sections. And we come together and we meet, and then on the day of our big event, it's just awesome to see everybody taking care of all the business. And never had this happen before I had the board of directors, where I could actually get on a horse and ride a horse with these kids.
Wow.
And now I can.
Yeah, now you can actually take that extra time.
I did. And it was awesome. And that board of directors that I have are awesome, because I know that I could not do this without them.
It's interesting for me because I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago that I really, kind of brought some team members in, and, marketing director and He's soon going to be the CEO because I don't like the business stuff at all. I hate it. I hate talking to companies about sponsoring veterans for the project and, podcast sponsorships, even though I believe in the work fully and I don't have any problem doing it. It's like very good to have somebody there who can have that emotional disconnection and be like, hey, Tim, they didn't just tell you your work sucks. They just can't do it.
Right.
Like having him, he's my best friend, Blake, but he does an incredible job with the work, but his emotional disconnection from it is like very important. And then having an assistant and like having all those things, like initially adding those things in was like, oh, this is going to take so much time. But in reality, it's like freed me up to do a lot of stuff.
And you have to let go of some of it. And people are really good at what they do. They have certain areas where they're really good at what they do.
And way stronger than us in those areas.
You have to let them do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've learned that with, so many times with kind of releasing that control. Yes, it's always a risk because you could get some scumbags. It can happen. But, the important thing is in releasing that control with people that you learn to trust, there's a real process of growth there, and it frees you up to do the creative thing that you need to do, which this is an art. I mean, what you're doing is art. You're teaching these kids to be around these animals and creating that powerful connection. And that's a process.
You know what these kids tell me? I will always remember this. I will always remember the first time that I touched a horse. And kids that come here, some of them say, I rode a horse once. And it was at this place at this time I rode this horse. And the horse that I rode wasn't this nice. But even adults come here and they tell me, I remember the first time I rode a horse.
Right.
So people always remember the first time they rode a horse.
I remember the first time I rode a horse.
See?
Yeah.
Told you.
I had an allergic outbreak, though. All Texans that listen to this podcast are like, I am no longer listening to the Veterans Project podcast. Tim is allergic to horses. He is not one of us. But I love him still. I love him.
I know.
You saw me petting him earlier.
I'm
like, I might blow up. I don't know. We're going to take a chance.
Look at you. You're still good, and you pet
I'm
him.
alive and standing. Yeah. So with Chris Krossing Foundation, what are the goals of of the work as you move along? What do you really see for Chris Krossing in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I do not want the audience of Gold Star families to continue to grow.
Yeah,
that's a club you don't really want to belong to.
No,
but I would like to see us branch out into helping veterans more, PTSD. Right now our focus is on Gold Star families. So we're also have welcome in families of fallen first responders.
Okay.
So we grow a little bit at a time. So I do have some veterans that are interested in coming out here. So we kind of brought some out here with reunions. A group that were together in Bosnia, they came out here and had a reunion and they rode the horses. So there's some other ones that are considering having reunions out here. So as we continue to grow, I think that we're going to wrap our arms around more veterans with PTSD.
So, one question that I have for you, you've gotten remarried, to Daryl, and he's a pretty nice guy. He interrupted our podcast, but we'll forgive him.
He's a keeper.
He's a keeper. That's such a tough thing, stepping into that world, stepping into the world of a Gold Star wife and accepting that there are still going to be hard days. And she's going to struggle with that. And guess what? You're probably like never going to be number one in the heart because she's still going to have that guy in her head, Yeah, well, it is. And it just makes him more extraordinary because he deals with it and he deals with it very balanced.
Yeah. He's rooted and he's confident and he's helpful and he accepts everything that is thrown my way. I could be at the cemetery laying wreaths on graves, and none of this stuff intimidates him. Yeah. He just wants to help.
It takes a special kind of man, doesn't it?
Gosh, it does. Yeah. And I can tell you this, they're few and far between. and he is very special in that respect because he does deal with all of these things. And, he could have married somebody else did it and have this world attached to them.
Right. But then he wouldn't have as special of a lady.
If you say so, Tim.
What would you tell to somebody stepping into that world, somebody, a husband or wife, meeting someone as a Gold Star, spouse?
You have to be open.
Yeah.
You have to be open, but you have to be confident in your relationship. that you're not going to let any of these things bother your relationship.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
and that's tough. It's easy to say, tough to do, right?
it could be with somebody who, you know, was skeptical, but the individual is gone.
Mm-hmm.
But he served our country.
Yeah.
And he's never going to be forgotten. And if an incoming spouse can't handle that, then they're going into the wrong marriage.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you got a whole nother package, you know, whenever you're married to a widow of fallen military.
Definitely.
You know, because the military is always going to be around.
Right, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
And there's going to be people who make sure that fallen military is never, ever forgotten.
Yeah. What do you think, what would you tell a spouse, you know, who is new to this world, you know, just lost someone? Obviously, you know, with the wars going on in other places, you know, guys are still dying, guys are still getting killed. You know, not as much so, but still happening. What would you tell, you know, a new Gold Star wife who's just, you know, beginning the grieving process?
Well, it's happened.
Yeah.
Where new Gold Stars come into our group.
Wow.
And I just hold their hand and say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you belong to this group, because this isn't a group that people want to belong to. And we try to help them, but, you know, like if they have questions about what to do with investing money that they get with SGLI, you know, we can help them with that. We can help them by understanding that everybody's going to come out of the woodwork and ask for their money.
Yeah.
Or ask to borrow money, or will you give them money? Because that happened to me.
It's so sick.
Well,
that really bothers me.
It happens.
Yeah.
Yes, it's happened to a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes even their parents want the money.
Wow.
You know, we just try to help them by the things that we faced, that there was nobody really around to tell us back in 2007 what to do.
Yeah.
There was no survivor outreach services. These are things that all have evolved because of the recent conflicts.
Yeah.
But there was no survivor outreach services or other organizations or grief therapists. There's therapists for veterans who come back with PTSD, but no grief therapists for widows. But there are now.
Yeah. You know, I think about the past of, you know, Gold Star families and like dealing with that, and it's advanced so much. You know, the community has advanced so much. But like, you know, we were at the World War II Museum, me and my marketing director in New Orleans, and like one of the plaques was like talking about a guy who died on Tarawa as a Marine in World War II, and he had just gotten married like a couple years before to like the love of his life, and there's a picture of him and her like on there, and you know, very powerful, moving picture. She did not tell the family that they got married so that they could keep the money.
Wow.
And they didn't find out until like 20 years later.
Wow.
How crazy is that? But I just think about...
Very selfless.
Yeah, very selfless. But also I'm like thinking, you should have taken that money. You know, like you need that help.
That's what they put your name on there for. But
right.
I remember when they handed me a check and I threw it back at them. I said, that's blood money. I don't want that.
Yeah. I'm sure you probably, you know, in the moment are furious that you...
I was furious.
Yeah. Can't imagine.
I was mad for a long, long time.
Yeah. How do you get past that rage? Is it a time thing, or is it just
time?
Yeah, it just takes time. I think that's what you were pointing out earlier. You know, with you know, talking to these new Gold Star wives. You know, it's like, what can you say? You know, there's really nothing, because everybody's experience is different. You know, I've talked to ladies that, you know, 10 years later they still cry every day, and I've talked to ladies who, you know, 5 years later emotionally they've, you know, been able to handle it, you know, and everybody handles it differently. It doesn't make you stronger or weaker.
No, you just learn to live with it. And it's painful, but you just put that pain you just learn to live with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just become numb to everything.
What do you mean by that?
It still happens. I mean, you know, like something could be a big old deal and you're just like, whatever.
Yeah. The pain kind of...
It's really weird, but you think the world should come to a stop. You think everything should just stop. But, you know, here you are burying your husband, trying to figure out what you're going to do with all of his personal effects. And and people are just still going around doing stuff, and celebrities are acting crazy, and stuff on TV is ridiculous, and that's just you just become numb to all that.
It seems so small, all that other stuff. You're like, what are you complaining about? Like, all the little things, and in that moment, but that perspective also makes you stronger. I believe that, I think that was one of the things I came back. I remember I had a moment where I was really angry. Some girl was complaining about her cell phone and like the fact that it wasn't moving fast enough. And it was at the theater. I just got back from Iraq and I told my dad was like, you just can't expect everybody to have your perspective. So like, he's like, even though it stinks to see that, you got to use that for good. Like use that for good, use that to make other people's lives better by telling our stories and being able to do that. And it's funny now because now at the Veterans Project, I'm able to do that. But I remember being so angry all the time. And part of, my best friend from my unit, killing himself, taking his own life and leaving 2 kids and a wife behind, instead of like taking that like negatively and just going into a hole and being depressed about it all the time, that's been my driving light for this work. Like stepping in, that's why I started the Caregiver Project, was because of him. I had to step into those spaces with his wife and kids where I was photographing them in the same places I did his Veterans Project. And, there's this one photo I took where Nikki, his wife, and it says, "Baby, I'm coming home" on the back of the door. He wrote it in Sharpie.
Really?
And he did come home, but he lost the battle here. And, I remember talking to him 2 or 3 times a week, and it was just out of his mind, and just really got heavily into alcohol and struggled with it. And seeing that struggle, was hard on me because I knew him as this powerful, strong leader, and then all of a sudden just to see his defenses broken down and to see him, feeling weak.
You just want to say that right thing that pulls him out of it.
And you can't.
No, and I've had several of Chris's soldiers come back to me and talk to me and tell me they didn't want to live anymore. And one of them I just pulled to the side and I said, "Let me tell you one thing. You made it home. Yeah. You make something of your life. You do something good. And you bring awareness. I don't care what it is you do, but do not tell me you want to die.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me about that."
Yeah.
And
I think every one of those guys thinking those things should have to come talk to someone like you. I really do. I think that would like stop like 90% of the suicides. I really do. You know
what? It stopped one of them. He came back and told me, he goes, "You changed the way that I think." He said, "Now I go and I work out instead of laying around getting fat." He goes, "I go out and I work out and I get my energy back." And he goes, "You told me something that will stick with me forever." And I said, "I don't know exactly what it was that I said that'll stick with you forever." I said, "But good."
Yeah.
Because let me tell you anything, there's a whole bunch of them that wish they were here today.
Yes.
And they're not.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And they would not want to be hearing that soldier talk that way.
And there's just way too much suicide.
Yes. It's a massive problem.
It is. I remember this past Kids Day, I asked this one young lady, she came last year, she came this year, she's awesome. And I said, "Do you mind if I ask you a personal question?" And I'm not that type of a person that does that,
you don't strike me that way. Yeah.
No. And I said, "How did you lose your husband?" She said, "Suicide." And I don't know, for some reason, I just knew she was going to say that. Yeah. Little girl, she was 3 years old when he took his life 2 years ago.
Jeez.
Now she's 5.
Yeah.
And she just hears stories about him.
And the thing is that pain never goes away.
No, and if he would have thought more about his little girl and where she would be 2 years from now or 3 years from now, and where he could be 2 or 3 years from now or 5 years from now, would he have done this?
No.
And it's they put up with so much, and then they come back and have to deal with people complaining about their cell phone not moving fast enough. It's aggravating. It is, but you just have to take one day at a time, and you have to just like your dad told you, the perspectives are not the same.
Yeah. You can't expect it to be the same, but that's the beautiful thing about us is we do understand. You understand. You have a heightened sense of respect for every part of life.
Exactly. And it takes death.
Yeah.
At times it takes death to shake you to the core.
Yeah.
To realize what's important.
Yeah. What would you want people to remember most about Chris?
Oh, That he was a caregiver. He took care of so many, and if it was going to their home, and he'd walk over and look in their refrigerator and make sure they had enough food to eat. And I remember,
Wow.
yeah, he'd buy books for the ones that were going to schools. He just, if you need a rocket launcher, let me know. I remember in Iraq, some of the DFAT guys were going out and Chris was helping them, saying what areas were hot and what they would need, and, you know, just to be careful in certain areas. And one of the DFAT guys said that Sergeant Kiernan could get us anything we needed. If we told him we needed something, he would go get it for us.
Yeah.
He just knew a lot of people. He had a lot of connections.
That's awesome.
And because of the job that I had, you know, I knew a lot of upper echelon military, a lot of the officers, and they would walk by or they'd go look for him because they knew he was my husband. And a lot of the other guys saw these generals and colonels coming asking where he was and wanting to meet him and stuff because of the job that I had.
Mm-hmm.
But he was well thought of. And I mean, his death affected thousands of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think that you can grasp that until it happens. I mean, you don't know who thinks the world of you, and how many people back you, and how many people miss you. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, his death shook a lot of people up.
You know what though, Donna? I think that's a real wake up call to how we treat people every day. You know?
It is. You're
Isn't it?
exactly right. Yeah. It certainly is.
I just had a 7 Special Forces group guy tell me that. He said, you know, coming back from combat, and he'd done 15 deployments. And he came back and he said, yeah. He came back and he said on his 15th, he finally, you know, was injured too much, and they finally forced him out, you know, after 22 years. But he just said, you know, when you've seen that much death, you just realize how precious every day is, and how you need to tell somebody you love them if you love them. You need to hug someone if you want to hug them.
Yeah.
You need to get past your stupid stubbornness and, you know, break down and and make that phone call.
God,
when you're struggling.
Make that phone call and pass some kindness on.
Yes. More, man, the world needs more of that. This country needs more of that.
Pay it forward. That's it. And I do notice that a lot about some that have come back and, you know, realize that trivial things are just that, trivial.
Yeah, very trivial. It's a difference in mindset, for sure.
It absolutely is.
So, you know, I wanted to ask you one more question that's very important to this work, but, you know, with, you know, holidays coming up, I'm sure you think about him quite a bit, and, you know, and those times, and, you know, kind of are markers in a lot of people's minds. What do you want people to remember most about you and your legacy, and, you know, and what you bring into this world? And I know that's kind of a vague question, but I always say, you know, our legacies are the mission with this work, and it is. You know, what do you want to have impressed upon people, and what do you want them to say about you?
Wow, that's a loaded question.
It is.
I think I share what I have, and I share what I have for the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
If I feel like I have something good, I want to share it with others. That's how this came about.
Yeah.
And if I want them to remember something about me,
It's a tough one. It's not supposed to be easy.
It's not easy. I guess that, you know, I would like to be remembered as being a selfless person that just shared whatever I had.
Yeah.
That I felt was good. And I think that people need to share goodness every day, and make sure that you smile and you greet people, and you just pass it on so they'll pass it on.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it great if that was happening in large amounts everywhere?
Yes.
And for the most part, I think it does, because I do really feel sorry for people who are all caught up in trivial things and angry all the time, and, you know, that just abusive and stuff. I really do feel sorry for them. They're missing out on so much.
Yeah. It's a rich life if they let it be.
Exactly.
You know, and like you said, sometimes it takes experiencing death to realize that, you know, being around the military, realizing that sacrifice, not even death necessarily, but just seeing the consistent sacrifice that guys are making, you know, whether it's time away from home or, being wounded or being killed. All of those things add up. And that's what I love the most about this community. That's what I love about doing the podcast, the blog, is that I get to be around the most impressive people all the time. And so women like you, are most impressive to me because you didn't ask for it.
Well, Tim, you're pretty impressive.
That's what I was fishing for.
I think you're impressive.
That was it.
I'm impressed.
Well, I appreciate that a lot, but I feel like if you can't give something back, then what are you doing as a warrior, as a war fighter? You come back, you got taught all those incredible intangibles.
Yes.
Being in an infantry company, being surrounded by the honor, the dignity, the self-respect, the integrity, and then seeing all of that in the lineage of the men that came before me, Vietnam, Korea, World War II, warriors, and you're talking about dying in record numbers during those wars and, completely changing the culture of men that were left in this country when they came back. I mean, I think my grandpa's town, like a quarter of the men died, during World War II. So like that, knowing that legacy, I tell people all the time, I said, I've gotten the privilege, or if you want to call it that, of being around celebrities who care about veterans, in different circles. And I don't ever feel anything when I'm around them. But when I'm around the World War II guys,
yeah,
oh my gosh,
they're also,
I feel like my skin's going to come off. I get so many chills, like you can't, because that they've seen so much death and so much pain. And yet they fought through that courageously and kept going. And they did not, and most of them did not think they were coming home.
No.
They just thought, like, this is it, I've made my final sacrifice by even being here. And so for them to come home was like a gift.
But now they're living to be 100.
Yeah. And now they have this amplified sense of life, though, Donna. Like, they are the most happy people I've ever met.
They are, and very grateful people.
Yeah. But you take a Japanese machine gun pinning you down for 10 straight days, you're like, oh man, all I need is a bed and I'm good. Like nobody's, I think Paul Merriman said it to me, the Iwo Jima Marine. He said, I might have had a $240 million company, but the best thing about my life was getting to pull my covers over my head and know I wasn't going to get shot at.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's special. That's a special perspective.
Special.
Yeah.
That is very simple, yet
profound.
Very powerful. Yes.
Yes. Well, Donna, is there anything that, you want to kind of put out there as far as the website and your social media? It's Chris Krossing Foundation, right?
It's Chris Krossing Foundation. Mm-hmm. Our website is chriskrossing.com, and that's Chris, CHRIS, and then Krossing is spelled with a K.
Okay.
KROSSING.
How do you decide on the name for that?
Because it's Chris Kiernan's initials.
Okay, gotcha.
And I say this is a place where people gather and our paths continue to crisscross forever.
That's cool. And then do you guys have an Instagram or a Facebook or? Yes,
Facebook is Chris Krossing Foundation.
Okay.
But remember to spell crossing with a K.
I'll make sure they'll remember, or I'll threaten their lives, because that's how important it is to me.
That's it.
Yeah, and it feels right that we're doing this on Giving Tuesday, even though it won't, it's not coming out tonight. It is cool that we get to do this on Giving Tuesday.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Thank you for letting me have this opportunity.
Well, I appreciate you. I don't see it that way. I see it as my opportunity to get to spend time with people that I feel like, chills being around, because you have given the ultimate sacrifice in your life in, giving your spouse to our blood wall that contributes to our freedom. That security blanket that we have is because of men like Chris being willing, because guess what? In war, someone's going to have to die. Unfortunately. And so if those that don't contribute to the blood wall need to appreciate those that do. And believe me, I do. I appreciate those men. Whether the war is right or wrong or whatever, I know that he was fighting for the brotherhood.
Exactly. And I believe the same thing.
Mm-hmm. And the brotherhood was what I was over there for, too. I love those men. Every day I take a bullet for them, happily. Never had to, but I feel blessed to have this life.
Well, it's a brotherhood that a lot of people don't understand.
No, you can't understand unless you're a part of it.
Unless you're a part of it.
Yeah. Well, Donna, it's been a real privilege to have you on. Just remember, everybody, the website, chriskrossingfoundation.com, right?
It's chriskrossing.com.
chriskrossing.com. I just messed it up.
That's okay. And Facebook is Chris Krossing Foundation.
Okay, Chris Krossing Foundation. All right. Well, Donna, it's been a privilege to have you on. We love our Gold Star wives, and we are very thankful for you. And don't forget that our legacies are the mission.
This has been the Veterans Project Podcast with our founder, Tim Kay. Check us out at www.thevetsproject.com, on Instagram at The Veterans Project, Facebook, The Veterans Project, and Twitter at Project_Veteran. Thanks for listening, and don't forget, our legacies are the mission.